Hi, welcome back. In this video, I'm going to talk to you about retirement accounts. Okay. Now, I know that if you're 17, 18 years old, right, you're probably not thinking about retirement and what that looks like. And you're like, oh, that's not going to happen for a lot of time, right? Until I'm 60 or however old, right? Um, but I do want you to think about if you are going to retire when you're 50, 60 years old, um, let's look at the money and what that time can do for you, right? How do we use time to your advantage right now as you're starting off fresh into your jobs or your careers? My goal today is to educate you with some information. At the end, I'm going to give you some recommendations of some books that are very popular and well known that will also assist you in learning more information. By all means, I am not trying to give you advice financially, right? Everyone's situation is unique and different, so hopefully you can research more into things and you can make your own decisions that are good. The idea is here is to learn about money, learn how to invest and how does this work? How can we use things in your favor, right? In our last video, we spoke about this formula, compound interest, and the effects of like taking out a car loan and how much the car will how much they will charge you over time for that same car. But a lot of this money that you're giving are towards a company, right? The company is profiting over time from your payments. Well, what if you made contributions to your own retirement account and you were the one profiting over time? What if money started working in your favor, right? So the goal today is to talk about some of these things. Hopefully you find it educational. And remember, it's impossible to put everything in one short video. Um, there's a lot more videos that you can look into, a lot more books, things that you can study so you can make some good decisions financially. All right, let's get started. Now, we use this account or this information, right? We're going to use a slightly different formula that I will walk you through in a minute to talk about it. But our main focus today is how do you open up a Roth IRA account and what that is. Okay. Now, a Roth IRA, right, is known as an individual retirement account. It's a type of individual retirement account. And these are the three main companies that you can open for investments, right? I mean, there's a ton of companies. There's Acorns you can invest through. Um, Even in your phone when you're sharing money between people, right? Like Cash App, you can even invest in there. You can buy Bitcoin. You can buy all that kind of stuff. Um, what I'm talking about here for an individual retirement account is I'm going to be talking about long term, not how to like invest money today and pull it out tomorrow and how do you do day trading stuff. Like that's its own conversation. This is using compound interest formula, right? How do we use that in the long term of things? Hence the word retirement, right? Long term, years from now. These are the three most established companies that you can look into, right? Now, every company is different. They have slightly different names for the same fund that you're going to be investing into, but these are the ones that are the most established of all the companies, right? Just like you can go open up a bank account, you can go look at a bank for a checkings account. Well, to look at uh, an account for investing, we have brokerages, right? These are three brokerage companies that we're going to be talking about. And they all have their own prices in terms of the fees that they account for, right, for everything. Now, these fees, right, let's first talk about index funds. I want to tell you about index funds specifically. You can buy stock like, so there's a lot that goes into this, right? When you're looking at stocks, you can go buy a stock from Tesla, you can go look at an individual one. I'm going to be telling you primarily the total market index fund and the S&P 500 index fund. And I'll explain that here in a minute, right? But an index fund is just a mutual fund or an ETF that's designed to passively track the market benchmark, right, for different companies. Index funds are known for their low fees, right? Now, for you to be able to invest your money, these companies will charge you different fees for different index funds, right? But index funds themselves are cheaper than if you just go buy one stock of, let's say, a Tesla or Apple or something, right? Because Apple will have their own fees and stuff. But an index fund will be a lot cheaper. Now, an expense ratio, what this is, right, is an annual percentage fee that's deducted from how much you're having. So the company will charge you a percent for being able to invest. So if you have $1,000 in your account, they can charge you 3%, 10%, 20%. There's different percents, right, that they can charge you as a fee for them holding your money for investing purposes. Now, the thing about index funds is that they have low expense ratios as well. These are the two more common ones that I would recommend that are also recommended by investors is the total market index fund, and they have different sticker names depending on which company you're getting it from, right? And they all offer low expense ratios. That means that they're going to charge you 0.015%, which is lowest of all of these three, right? Less than 1%. 1% would be here. We're talking about 0.015%. So even smaller than 1% fee for keeping your money with them as an investment, right? The S&P 500, which is these three right here, the S&P 500 basically allows you to diversify or invest in the top 500 companies. If you don't know where to start, this is what I would look into, the S&P 500. Because instead of investing into one company, right? Let's say that you want to invest into, I don't know, Tesla. If you invest into one company, right? If they have a good year, your money goes up. If they have a bad year, your money will tank. If the company closes and for some reason they don't exist in 10 years, all that money that you invested goes away, right? Investing in one company is very risky, right? Long term, what you can do though is you can invest in the top 500 companies. So what these ETFs or index funds do is they consider the top 500 companies. And what's happening is you're investing a little bit of a percentage into each of those. The index fund handles that for you. So if a top 500 company doesn't exist tomorrow, they'll come out and they'll put the next top company that's investing in there, and they reshuffle your percentages, right? So what's really useful about the S&P 500% is that let's say Apple has a really good year and they invent the next piece of technology that everybody wants, right? And they're going to bring you a lot of money. But then at the same time, in the top 500 companies, maybe Tesla has a really bad year and then you lose money. Well, because you're not investing all of your money into Tesla or all into Apple, the 500 is going to balance it out. That's what the S&P 500 does, right? It takes into consideration the top 500 companies currently in the market, and it divides a small percent into each. And then your money, say you invest $1,000 or $100 or just $1, it'll divide the amount that you invest into the percent of each company so that it grows, or as things grow and change and fluctuate over time. The S&P 500 is known to be increasing over time. Right? The stock market for the top 500 companies will always be growing, even if some years it drops or some years it grows, right? And in the long run, I mean, if you only invest for 1 or 5 years, like it'll fluctuate. Some years you have 23% growth, right? Sometimes it shoots up by a lot. Sometimes it drops 10%, right? So the investing that we're talking about is long-term investing. We're talking about 20, 30, 40 years. What happens to your money so that when you retire in the long run, what would it look like? And in the long run, it'll always grow, right? The track record for like the S&P 500 is between 11 and 14% on average. That's what it's tracking, right? It'll change. Sometimes you have even higher numbers of return. Sometimes it's lower, but you can say that about 12% for the S&P 500. Now, how do you pick around these as you start to research some of this information? Some of these you have to have a minimum of 3,000 to buy into them, right? Some of them you don't have to pay in at all. You can start with zero money and you just put $100 each month. Some of them like you have to start with 3,000 and then you can put whatever money you want. So don't just look at the expense ratios. You can also look at the starting amount that you need to buy into the stock. But the S&P 500 is a great index fund to look into. Yeah. Now the difference between the S&P 500 is the total market index fund. You can also invest into all the companies that exist, the ones that are doing great and the ones that are about to not exist anymore, right? And you can buy that index fund as well. But instead of dividing the profits or the percentage over 500 companies, it'll invest them over all of the ones that are in the market, right? But S&P 500 is a great place to start. Your goal is to first open up an account with one of these, right? And then in there, you would open up a Roth IRA account. And you're allowed to do this the minute you start getting a job. So if you're 16, 17 years old and you have a part-time job, right? You're already paying taxes, you're doing all that kind of stuff. You're allowed to open up a Roth IRA. And the Roth IRA, you're allowed to contribute $7,500 into this account on an annual basis, right? So here's a little bit more information on a Roth IRA. Every year, you're allowed to deposit up to $5,500 into your account. On a monthly basis, that's about $600, like 600 and, what is the math? Let me see. Yeah, that's about $625 per month that you can deposit if you want to invest into a Roth IRA. You're allowed to invest into other accounts, right? You're allowed to buy $10,000 of stock tomorrow if you wanted for Apple. But for a Roth IRA, for this particular purpose, you can deposit up to this amount per month. And it all helps you with your taxes. It's tax deductible and all that kind of stuff. Now, if we're going to go through some scenarios right now, like how does it work if I invest $100 a month in my paycheck and that kind of thing. We're going to talk about the Roth IRA, yeah. And I'm going to be focusing primarily on, like, say, an index fund of the S&P 500, which is an average of 12% return in its lifetime, right? Since its existence. And I mean, in its existence, we're talking about, what is it, almost 100 years the stock market has been around? The 1930s, I gotta look more into that information, right? But the performance in its lifetime has been pretty high. Okay. So let's look at which equation is being used to calculate what your investment is doing in a Roth IRA. So you first open up an account with one of these people. They're most established. You can open it with whoever you want. Once you have an account, you're going to open up a Roth IRA account. And inside the Roth IRA account, that's going to be inside one of these companies. Inside the Roth IRA, you can choose which one you're going to invest into, right? You have to select the fund that the money is going to go into. This is just a type of account. It's kind of like saying, I want to open up a checkings account or I want to open up a savings account with my bank. Well, with this brokerage, you can open up a particular account and you could decide what money goes invested in there. And I'm more than welcome to answer questions in person or talk to your parents if they know about this stuff. Yeah. So let's talk about how money is working with the calculations of things. In our previous video, we spoke about this formula, right? Where R represents the rate of growth, the rate of change, which is some sort of percent that we converted to a decimal, and represents the amount of times that the interest is compounded per year, right? Number of times interest compounds per year, and then T represents the time, how many years is changing over time. Now, what we're going to talk about for a retirement account is the difference between doing this, a one-time deposit. How does your money grow as a one-time deposit in the S&P 500, right? Where the S&P 500 has a 12% return or 0.12% return in its lifetime. Unless you're planning to retire tomorrow, right? We're talking about 25, 30, 40, 50 years, depending on how much time you want to leave things in there. right? If it's a one-time deposit, you use this equation. Now, in a retirement account, you usually contribute. You put monthly contributions, meaning every month you go and you put another $100 or $200 or $500, right? In an S&P 500 or in a Roth IRA, you're allowed to put in up to $625 per month. We're not going to deposit that much money. We're going to do an example about like $150 a month because you're, 17, 18 years old. But as you get older and you make more money, you can always contribute more, right? Every month if you want to. And when you're doing a monthly contribution, we have to add to this equation. This is how much it does if you don't touch the money at all. But if you add a contribution, we have this other piece of the equation. We're going to add C represents contribution. How much money are you going to add every month consistently? We're going to do an example with $150 contribution each month. So you're going to save $150, and instead of putting it into a savings account, right? Because a savings account won't have this kind of growth. Savings accounts in banks usually have like 2% return, right? 3% is like really, really good. Banks are referred more for like money that you need tomorrow. I'm going to save money to buy a car, so I need to put in a savings account, right? Retirement accounts are not something you pull out tomorrow. You're not going to pull that money out tomorrow. You want to pull that money way later in the long run. All the other variables represent the same thing. The rate, the number of times it's being compounded, the years, the rate over the number of times it's being compounded. But the new variable here is contribution. How much are you going to add each month? And you can play with these numbers, right? You can add 150 per month. You can add 200 per month, 300 per month. And then overall, this tells me the final amount in your bank account or in your investment account. Final amount of money that we're going to be working with, right? And I want to show you how this equation works in your favor using this stuff. Now, you don't have to be crunching numbers constantly. You can track all that stuff through your brokerage account. So let's do a scenario, right? I think I covered the basics, right? Quick recap. Open up a brokerage account with one of the top 3 companies. Look into the expense ratios, look into the minimum deposits, look into that stuff before you open it. It's all public information, just Google it. Once you open up your account, in that account, you're going to open up a Roth IRA account. It's a specific account with them, with the company that you choose. Yeah? Inside that account, so you're going to start with your brokerage. You're going to start with one of these. In there, you're going to select Roth IRA. And inside the Roth IRA, you're going to choose the index fund. The S&P 500 as an example. We did 2 examples. Total market index versus S&P 500. We're going to focus on the S&P 500. Right? When you select that fund, in that fund, you're going to contribute money each month. You're going to put money in. And we'll talk about how much money and how a difference it makes. Pick an account, open up a Roth IRA, and inside the Roth IRA, select the fund. And here you can select a lot of funds if you want. You can have multiple things, but we're going to focus on the S&P 500. All right, here's the scenario. Your family gives you $1,000 as a graduation gift. Yeah, I hear that a lot of my students get money for graduation. So let's say you get $1,000. You decide to invest half of it into a Roth IRA. Now, let's say that we want to invest $500 in a Roth IRA account. Let's actually invest all of it. Instead of half, because I already put some stuff in the calculator. You want to invest all of this into a Roth IRA. $1,000. 5 years later, you decide to take out the money. How much money do you have? Well, since it's a one-time contribution, we're going to use this equation. Because we're not making monthly contributions. We're only doing it one time. So you plug in your $1,000. The rate of return is 12%, which is 0.12. Your compounding monthly is a compound for these investments, right? 12 times per year. How many years? We're talking about 5 years. So when I plug that information in, here's what we have. You're going to have approximately $1,816.70. And I say approximately because, again, there's fluctuation in the market. Maybe that's a good year and you make more money. Maybe it's a bad year and you're making less, like $1,500 or something like that. Either way, you deposited $1,000 and now your account has almost doubled because you left it in there for 5 years. You didn't do anything, right? While you were in college, you were letting that money just kind of sit there. Now, the average person does not retire right after college, right? Right after college, they normally start to get a job and things like that. But this is one scenario. Now, let's say that you don't take out the money 5 years later, and instead, you want to contribute $150 to the account. So this is where we use the full equation, because now you're going to add money each month. And we're going to contribute $150, but you're allowed to contribute more, right? Up to $625 in that Roth IRA. How much money will you have after 15 years? Well, this formula, what I would add, I will still have $1,000. The rate is 12%. But instead of times 5, we're going to multiply it by 15 because it's 15 years we're waiting. And since it's a monthly contribution, I have to add another $150. And this is where I plug it in all into the equation. Now the equation might seem complex, but just let the math do its own thing. 1 plus 0.12 over 12. 12 times 15 years minus 1. You're dividing it by the rate over the compounding amount per year. Now, all of that, you don't have to do it by hand, right? We could just plug it in. Let this handle it for you. When you type it all in, you're going to see that you have approximately $80,932.80 in your account because you decided to contribute $150 each month. Now, how much money did you actually contribute in those 15 years? Well, in 15 years, let's do some math real quick. 15 years times 12 months times $150 per month, you contributed a total of $27,000. Technically 28 because you added the extra 1,000. So you deposited $28,000. This is how much money you put in. But the time and the 12% interest gave you this much money. That's almost triple the amount, right? So your money almost tripled in 15 years because you put it in into a retirement account. You only needed this much to make it go that. Now let's think about it. $150 a month. That's not even a car payment. And honestly, if you're paying your own insurance, that's not even insurance. Your insurance will probably be $250, $300 as a 17, 18-year-old, right? So what do you normally pay that's $150? Probably a cell phone plan and maybe a few subscriptions like Spotify or Apple Music or Netflix or something, right? You spend $150, some people in eating out, right, in a month. So if you're adding $150 to your retirement account, in 15 years, you're going to have this money. Now, how many people are retiring in 15 years? Not many. So let's play with these numbers, right? Instead of 15 years, why don't we do the same scenario? But here's how much we contributed, right? How much money did you contribute? Well, we did 12 months for 15 years, and we contributed $150 each time. And we said we contributed $27,000 plus the initial $1,000. That's how much money you contributed to the account. right? Would you pull the money out after 15, or would you be willing to wait 15 years? Well, let's talk about what it would be after 15 years. So I take this equation, and all I have to change is the number of years. Change that to 20 years, and change the other t to 20. Now we have $159,000. $159,281 in your savings account. From 15 to 20, in 5 years, your account grew from 80,000 to double, right? Double would be 161. So your amount doubled in that time frame. How much money did you contribute in that time frame? Well, 5 years later, how much did we contribute? Well, 12 months for 20 years times $150. We contributed a total, I'm going to just tweak these numbers here. Instead of 15 years, I'm going to do 20 years. $36,000. This is how much money you put into your account. Also plus 1,000 that in the initial, right? Your graduation gift, if you want to count that. So you deposited $37,000 in the last 20 years. For most people, that's like your average car price, right? If you go buy a car, even after over time, it's probably more than $37,000 for a car that you're paying. But because you deposited $150 per month for the next 20 years, you paid or you put into the account $37,000, but the account now has 160 grand, pretty much, which is way more than that amount, right? That's like 5 times the amount. Your account is 5x. Now, when do people mostly retire? The average person retires between, I don't know, probably around 60 years old, maybe 65 years old. Let's say, for number purposes, you are 20 years old right now, just to keep the numbers simple. That means you're going to retire in 40 years. So let's do the math again, but for 40 years. Let's try that out. How much money would you have after 40 years in this account? Change 40 to 20 years to 40. E to the 6th power. What does that number look like? After 40 years, you're going to have almost $2 million in your account. 2 million. How much money did you deposit into your account in 40 years? Let's do the math real fast. We did $150 a month for 40 years. You deposited $72,000 in your life into this account, but your $72,000 became $2 million. Now let's think about this for a second. Yeah, $72,000 might seem like a lot, but in a lifetime, in your 40 years of work, people have a car payment for a long time. Because after one car, they buy another, or another, or another. And they're spending more than $72,000 in cars alone. You spend more than $72,000 in a lifetime eating out at McDonald's, right? Some people spend more than $150 a month in what? A cell phone bill? Cable? Internet? I don't know, a concert is way more than 150, right? So like, think about the different things that you do on a monthly basis. What are you spending $150 on that you're already going to spend for the next 40 years of your life? And what if you spent $150 for the next 40 years into your own account? And now you have $2 million waiting for you at retirement. Now, there's a lot more that goes into this. There goes when you talk about withdrawals and all of that. But all of this money in a Roth IRA will become tax deductible. And if you don't know about taxes, you can read more about it, right? But I wanted to show you the power of time. And how much would it change if you do $150 contributions? And imagine if you donated more. Not donated, but invested more a month. Right? Can you invest $200 a month? How would that change? That number would drastically change in your lifetime. And you still haven't even met the maximum amount that we said that you can deposit, right? You're allowed up to $625 per month if you're maximizing your retirement account. So that number can definitely change, right? It's easier to make these kinds of decisions of investing when you have zero debt. Most of you have zero debt right now. Most of you do not have credit card bills and car payments and house payments and all of that. So whatever money you make, you have enough money to be able to pay $150 per month in those kinds of things. But if you wait to have a house payment, a car payment, maybe you have credit cards, maybe you have a lot of these bills, right? Your paycheck now is really hard to find an extra $150. So starting early can definitely make you see the power of this, right? The power of compound interest by investing into a simple account. You don't have to know everything about stocks or day trading to know this stuff, right? Now, if you want to learn more, because this was really, really short, these are some books that I can recommend you to read, right? That I've read myself, that I've learned information from. But this one is a very simple book. This one, the author wrote this book for his daughter to teach her about investing, to teach her about retirement, to teach her about these kinds of things. And this book is probably like, I don't know, you can find $10 on Amazon, $12 maybe. And reading that book alone will tell you the exact names and the numbers and, right, the different accounts like that you can look into. Now, if you don't want to do that, the author of this book, Ramit Sethi, also has his own podcast that you can go and listen to that will also show you how to think differently, how to like look at the cost of maybe a Starbucks and how to use that and change the way of thinking in terms of investing and things like that. Anyway, here are 3 different books. Obviously not sponsored. I'm not sponsored in this video. I'm just trying to share information. And there's a lot more books that you can look into, right? The Psychology of Money is a really good one. The Millionaire Next Door is a really good one. There's a ton of books, right? Warren Buffett, there's a lot of different people out there that published or can tell you about these different books. And the goal is just to make more informed decisions as you go into adulthood. So that instead of inflation and money working against you in terms of debt, you can also have money working towards you. You can have money and companies paying you for the investment as opposed to the other way around. If you're already spending the money, let's not make it go into debt. Let's make it go into your pocket. All right, guys. I hope this has helped. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Talk to me if you need anything, if you want to talk about anything. And again, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just trying to inform you so that you can go and research more and make your own informed decisions. Have a great day. And as always, I'll calculate later.